Dave? Oh, you're muted.
Yes.
What happened to everyone else?
I don't know, but I see Nolan still sitting here quietly.
Yeah. Well, everybody else is muted, I guess.
Kai, are you able to share, or have you shared the slide deck with Archie?
Yeah, I can do that right now.
Okay.
And
She
Rick,
just texted.
Rick, you are on when you're ready, but you're on mute.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our board meeting. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are very privileged to be meeting on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish and St'át'imc nations. With that said, we have an agenda to approve. I have not been notified of any changes, so I think it's just approved as presented. If there's a trustee who can make that motion.
The agenda of this meeting be approved.
Thank you, David.
I'll second it, Rick.
Thank you very much. Ian, any discussion on the agenda? Seeing no discussion, is there anyone opposed to its adoption? Okay, that's carried. And we've got two sets of minutes to adopt or accept, rather, if some trustees can help with that.
That the minutes of the board meeting held on February 10, 2021 be adopted, be accepted.
Yep, thanks very much. Seconder for that.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, David. Any discussion on those minutes? In that case, anybody opposed? Those are accepted. That motion passes. And the next one.
That the summary minutes of the in-camera board meeting held on February 10, 2021 be accepted.
Thank you. Seconder for that one.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ian. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Any opposed to the passing of that motion? Okay, that's carried. Under chairperson's remarks, I don't have any remarks at the moment, so I will go to trustee remarks. And yep, sorry, go ahead, Ian.
Sorry. Trustee Walden and I attended the most recent DPAC meeting on Monday night. Superintendent Lisa McCullough presented on Board Policy 501.3, School Configuration and Student Placement. There were a lot of questions asked by parents, and we even had some parents that want us to move even faster or move faster than what we are currently doing. So a good meeting held by fun for all. Okay.
Thank you. With that, I think Cynthia Higgins had a report as well.
Oh, I was just hoping I could pass on some warm words about the Sea to Sky Teachers Association sponsored Professional Development Day, the last professional development day that the kids were home from school and the teachers were at work that day. It was lovely to be invited to participate with them, and I wanted to let everyone know that it was an excellent day of learning. Myrna McCallum came and via Zoom, and she spoke on trauma-informed practice, which was terrific, very difficult sometimes to hear, but very, very good learning for our staff. And in the afternoon, we had an excellent presentation by Timothy Caulfield, who talked about misinformation and how we can help our students recognize misinformation online. So thank you so much for letting me be a part of that. And I hope all of the teachers who participated enjoyed it and had a good day of learning. And a big, big thank you to the Professional Development Committee, who really worked hard to make it an excellent online day of learning. So thank you to all for that.
Great, thanks. I'll just check and see if there's any questions for Cynthia on that event. Okay, hearing none, we will move down to superintendent's remarks.
Thank you, Rick. I have just a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to reiterate Cynthia's thanks to the SSTA Pro D committee. They do a lot of work and they convene monthly to plan for all of the educators in the district, and they provided an excellent professional development day. So thank you to all of them. And of course, Della Halverson at the SSTA office. Without her work, these things would not ever come together. Robert's Rules of Order was the latest professional learning by the senior team at the district office. We all attended professional learning by the Continuing Legal Education Society of British Columbia. That was presented by Ellie Mina, and it was a full day workshop, obviously on governance, both for boards of education, but for city councils, etc. So that was interesting professional learning. And I was very grateful to be asked to present to the Council for the Ministers of Education of Canada recently. And on February 23rd, I walked the Council for all of the Ministers of Education in our country through a series of conversations about collecting data for results for students, particularly with a focus on advancing Indigenous education. And I was one of a number of members on a panel at the end of that day. So I'm grateful for that opportunity and was glad to represent our district there.
Great. Anything else, Lisa?
Thank you. Thanks.
Any questions for Lisa? Okay, we'll move down to the Secretary Treasurer's report, or remarks, I mean.
Thank you. So preparing for next school year, and if everything goes normally, our facilities department is implementing in a new software to help with our facility user groups when it comes to registration and bookings, etc. So it'll help make things a little bit more efficient and effective when it comes to knowing booking times, and also it will be paperless. So the software is called Perfect Mind, and it will be ready to go in a couple of weeks for the intent of using it for next school year starting September.
Good, thanks. Any questions for Mo? Okay, just before we move on to the next item, there's a remark that I should have made when I had the chance during the chairperson's remarks, and it was just to connect with people who are watching us on YouTube and who may be interested in asking questions of the board at the end of the meeting. A few tips. First of all, you may have already figured out that those questions have to be emailed, and there's an email address available for you. Mo, is it on the screen for them, or do they have to look for it on our website?
Sorry, the YouTube? It's on the website.
Know how to present your questions.
Oh, yeah. So basically, on the website, there is under board meetings. There is an email to basically the board and to which is to myself, and you would just send that email to that email address.
Okay, good. And we've been getting a few already, so I know that lots of people have got that system figured out, but I just wanted to mention it for anybody who was wondering how they would get questions to us. The request we have is that if you know about a question early, you don't need to wait until the agenda item comes up at the end of the meeting. You can send it in to us early. It just helps us be ready for it and improves the chances that you'll get a complete answer. If you can make any question that you have as succinct and clear as possible and mention the topic or the agenda item, our policy is that questions of clarification at the end of our meetings have to relate to an item that was on the agenda. I don't think that'll be a big challenge, seeing some of the questions I've looked at already. Most of them are related to one particular agenda item tonight. But it certainly helps, especially if it varies from that, if you can mention the agenda item. And I'll just also say that because we're very aware of the heightened interest in our new proposed policy 501, in this meeting, Lisa is going to make a pretty good try at addressing many of the issues that have been raised to us through email in the last week or two. And so you may find, if you've sent us questions, that they do get answered during her presentation. And we think that will be helpful. Any other questions we receive that aren't covered in your presentation, we are certainly going to attempt to take on at the end of today's meeting at the questions of clarification from the public session. So that was just the explanation I wanted to make in order that there's as few barriers as possible to people getting their questions to us. Thank you. Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to add about that question business?
No, I think it's good. If anybody's having difficulty with getting a question through, then send it to Mo Azim, so M Azim at sd48.bc.ca would be the easiest way if you're having any difficulty.
Right. So I'll say that address once again in case you're watching YouTube and trying to copy it down. It's M Azim, which is A-Z-I-M, M-A-Z-I-M, at sd48.bc.ca.
Yeah, thank you.
We will welcome your questions later in the meeting. We have no delegations this evening, but we have always one of our favorite parts of the meeting, which is a student, and in this case, student and staff presentation, I believe. And I see on my agenda, Nolan Cox and Kai Fetter are going to talk to us about online learning classroom. And the floor is now theirs.
Great. Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Thumbs up here.
Okay, great. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Good evening. And I'd like to thank the board and senior staff for allowing us a brief moment of tonight's board meeting to share how structures and strategies are being used in our new online environment for our K-9 students. I'd like to introduce Kai Fedor. Kai is our grade 2-3 teacher in our new K-9 online school. Kai has done an amazing job in taking the structures and strategies of our strategic plan and implemented them in an online environment. As you know, it was a very quick turnaround this year for the development of a K-9 school, and Kai has been with us since the beginning. So the motto of we're building it as we fly it is well known to her. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Kai to walk us through a brief presentation of some of the great learning that's happening in our class.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kai, and I am the grade 3-4 teacher with Sea to Sky online school. And today I am going to talk to you guys about structures and strategies with online learning. So this is just a little sneak peek at some things we do in my class. Am I able to control the screen and go through the slides?
You can let me know when to move on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so distance learning was a new world for all of us, students, parents, and teachers. There were so many questions at the start, and it was really scary. I knew there would be challenges, but I could see the potential for amazing, individualized, and unique learning experiences. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so setting up students for success. We spent a lot of time at the beginning building comfortable learning spaces at home. And this was the foundation for learning, growth, and self-discovery. For example, students had to ask, what are my distractions? What helps me focus? What are my body signs that I need a break? And how do I take a break? These were topics and self-regulation skills I had to teach students and parents at the beginning. And self-regulation skills are such an important part of online learning because students are constantly having to ask themselves, how am I doing in my learning? Where am I? Do I have questions? How do I ask for questions? And yeah, where do I go for all of these questions? So it's a really important skill that I definitely had to bring to the table in my class at the beginning. So online learning environments. We use a variety of spaces and groupings for online instruction. We have full class meetings, which I like to keep light and fun, because this is an opportunity for students to interact and socialize. We might critically think about a question or topic. We might use our creativity to design something or play games that help us get to know each other. So right now, our class loves Simon Says over the internet. And then we also do 20 questions. We love doing PE games online, and scavenger hunts have been really fun. Our online classroom or group meetings are a ton of fun. The kids are always laughing and giggling and moving around, and it's really awesome to see. We also have small group meetings for reading, math, and writing. These are more targeted lessons. And then we also do one-on-one work throughout the week. And we do all of this through Google Meets. We have Raz Kids and Epic Books, which are really great resources for literacy. And then we also use IXL, which is a great supplement for any of our math work. And these are also really good examples of task-oriented assessments and feedback where students are getting immediate and constant feedback right when they answer a question. I also provide self-made video instructions and written instructions, as well as the live instructions for students and parents. And this allows for a lot of flexibility in the schedule. So if a student misses a live video instruction, there's also the pre-made video instruction that I've provided for them that they can watch. And then we also try and keep students not on the screen the entire day. So we do provide opportunities where students can go for a nature walk and ask a question about their environment. Or we might use dice or card games for math for them to play games at home. And we do a lot of theme work or project-based work. Next slide, please. So scheduling and organizational systems. My schedule has adapted and changed a lot with collaboration and feedback from students and parents. A lot of my work has been teaching parents how to support their kids. However, students also need these clear visuals and instructions. And in these speech bubbles are just some of the comments that I've had over the last little while and the adaptations that I've made. But just due to time, I'm gonna move on and talk about our weekly schedule. So our weekly schedule has been an important part of distance learning. Parents love having the schedule sent out on Friday so that they have time to prepare and print out any work. Our schedule has easy clickable links, clear learning intentions, and weekly STAR self-assessments. We could click on the link and take a look at what one of the weekly schedule looks like, but I'm not sure if we're able to do that.
Archie, are you able to click on the weekly schedule, please, at the top?
That underlines the clickable link. Okay, and then if you click on, oh, you're not allowed access into my class. All right, that's okay. Maybe we can show it at the end or another time. Yeah, and then so moving on to the organizational systems, I do the daily 5 in my classroom. So read to self, read to someone, listen to reading, word work, and work on writing. These are all choices that students have to work on their literacy throughout the day. It builds reading and writing stamina, and it's a really good way for students to work on their literacy. They can also choose to do it in the morning or the afternoon, depending on what works for their day and what they're feeling in that moment. And then for math, we use Number Talks. So we are learning many different strategies to encourage critical thinking and choice. We also are promoting the idea that there's not one right way to solve a problem. So for example, in our live Number Talk session, students share and discuss how to solve a problem. So I might show an example of an equation on my screen, and then students are sharing how they would solve a problem. And then we might say, well, how would you solve a problem? And how would you solve it? And then it becomes this really amazing discussion where we're looking at this equation in all these different ways that we never even thought of before. And sometimes I've never even thought of that way of solving the problem. And it's a really cool experience. And And then, yeah, and the kids are also bringing stuff from their home of how they look at the question. And yeah, it's really awesome. And then throughout the week, we also, students get to choose their own math equations that they want to solve based on what they're comfortable with at this point in their learning. So I might provide some beginning level questions that they can work on, and then a medium range, and then a more challenging or advanced range of questions, and they get to choose which ones they're comfortable working with. And then we always suggest maybe trying one that's a little more challenging for you, giving it a shot, and then if you're not comfortable with it yet, going back to the ones that you are comfortable with. And then for theme, it's PBL inspired, so project-based learning inspired. We're exploring themes and topics through reading, class discussions, and personal inquiry. Students also develop their own questions and use their own creativity to produce their unique projects. And then at the end, we present our theme project. And this has been a really fun experience that's evolved and adapted into almost where students are self-running this, because they get to present their project, and then kids are raising their hand and asking questions, and the kids are calling on other kids to ask and answer their own questions. And it's really cool to see all of these kids interacting in this online world like that. Yeah, so next slide. Okay, engagement. So I was worried about how students would connect, collaborate, and engage. But here are just some examples of our amazing classroom. Students are so creative, they're adaptable, they're engaged, and it's just so much fun. So there's 2 videos that I think I'll share with you guys today, just based on time. The one with the lights at the top. Yeah, this is just one student's interpretation of a skipping dance routine, and it's so creative and hilarious. Yeah, you can play it.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, so students get to be so creative and use all of these different things that you wouldn't typically use in a school environment. So yeah, it's really awesome what they can come up with.
Good.
Yeah, and then the second one is just below it. So we just finished a space unit. And then after the space unit, we talked about stories in the night sky. So we watched and listened and read a whole bunch of First Nations stories that talked about how something in the sky came to be. So whether it was how the sun came to be in the sky, how the constellations came to be, the aurora borealis. And then our project was to create our own story of the night sky and how something came to be. And this student created this amazing stop motion presentation, and we can watch it here. Yeah, and then he had a whole story along with it. So those are just 2 examples of some of the engagement going on in the classroom. I wish I could show all the videos because they're so amazing. And I love, they're so much fun. I love my class. But we'll move on to the next slide.
Once upon a time, 2 evil aliens.
You want to try, Josh?
There we go. Okay, and then just quickly touching on assessment and feedback. RazKids and IXL are an awesome way that we can use assessment of learning and task-oriented feedback, where I think I already touched on this, but where students are getting that constant, direct, instant feedback as they're learning. And then this is a screenshot of some of our students showing different ways they might solve a math equation or math problem. And it's a really good way for assessment as learning and for learning. Also, talking about the steps taken to get the outcome is really good for the process of having feedback. And then in our weekly schedule, I have our weekly learning intentions, and this is a really great way for self-assessment that students can do every week, just an easy 3-star scale. So our reading learning intention this week was comparing 2 characters from our book that we're reading, and then they can assess themselves on a 3-star scale of how well they feel they're doing that. And then another written example of assessment of learning or as learning. It's also a really great way for self-regulation and for students to ask themselves how well they know something they're working on and when they can come to me to ask for more help or questions. And then our project work, also really good. We're working through the process of building our projects, so we're constantly getting feedback as we develop those projects. And they're also self-assessing themselves along the way, seeing where they're at, where they want to go. And it's a really great way for them to see their own personal growth and development. And then with our one-on-one video chats, this is a great way for assessment of, as, and for learning. And it's also a really great way for task and process-oriented feedback. Right, and then next slide. Awesome. And I just want to thank everybody so much for listening, and thank you all for all of your hard work and dedication. Thanks to the district, all the kids in my class have an equal opportunity for their learning. They all have access to computers and all of these amazing learning resources. So really a big thank you to everybody here. And yeah, that's my presentation.
Thanks, Kai.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to guess that the board will have some questions for you, and perhaps some of staff too, if you don't mind engaging with them for a few minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
I know they will, because I have 3 or 4 myself, but I'm going to let the other trustees go ahead first. So Ian, I see your hand up.
Yeah, no, Kai, that looks wonderful. Just great presentation. Wonderful to see all that's happening. Do you have the weekly schedule there? Like you said, I'd love to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can share my screen with you. Oh, I think I can. Oh, no. I guess I have to be allowed to share my screen.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's possible.
So Kai, maybe while people are asking questions, if you would email it to Archie, then she can throw it up afterwards.
For sure.
I think she was just given permission to share.
Yes, that's right.
Thanks, Archie. Way ahead of me.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Okay. Sorry, share my screen. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I click on my weekly schedule, we go here. So week 24. And this is week 24. We have weekly news, weekly to-dos. And then here's all of our check-in activities, going through the daily 5 and some optional or some tasks. You can see when I want you to post it, they have the little green classroom symbol. And then our math activities, our weekly learning intentions. We have our strategies for the week. So this is our weekly strategy. And then also all of the strategies we've been working on throughout the year are just listed on the side. And then for math, and then have a wonderful week. And also you can see, so all of these are clickable links. So, oh, where did I go? Oh no. So if I were to click on the art, A Starry Night, it would take me directly to where I need to go in my Google Classroom with the written instructions, video instructions, and a little information about it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kai. One more question, sorry. How many students are you working with?
I have about 30, just under 30 now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
What does 30 feel like? in this environment?
30 is a good number. Yeah, it's a great number because I'm working. At first, I was trying to do everybody have these one-on-one groups and have these one-on-one interactions, and it became way too much. The entire week was just all of these one-on-one meetings. And so grouping it into small groups and full classes was a way better strategy to do all of that. Yeah.
Anybody, I've got a couple more questions, but anybody else amongst the trustees?
Rick, may I just make a comment?
Please do.
Kai, it's fabulous work. You do fabulous work. We already have the pleasure of knowing that before this presentation. So I want to thank you. I want to reiterate what Nolan said about we did not have a K-9 online learning program, and the district did not offer that, as we really prefer to have our students in classrooms. And then you came along and you built this for families that needed you to do that, and it's remarkable. And my favorite thought bubble of all that the students shared is that you're more than a teacher.
Yeah, I had a parent text me that on Friday, and it was just the best way to start a weekend. Yeah, it was really nice.
You deserve
that's delightful to hear. One of my questions, Kai, was what was your teaching experience prior to COVID coming along and you getting this assignment?
Yeah, so I am a newer teacher. Last year I worked at Stormis Cultural Journeys. And then prior to that, I was for a few months on a contract at MAMQUAM and then TOCing.
Right. Okay. Well, you've done remarkable work for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for giving us part of your evening tonight.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me.
Okay. That's great. Okay, folks, we're going to move along down past trustee items, and I don't believe there are any. I'm pausing just to make sure I'm not wrong about that. And then we go down to board committees. We have very few committee meetings today, but the one we did have that we can report on here was Committee of the Whole. And I just wanted to mention really quickly that at Committee of the Whole, the board just quickly discussed upcoming calendar events. We had a report on Provincial Council, which Ian Kent attended on the board's behalf. And we had a brief discussion about getting ready for the BC School Trustees Association annual general meeting, which is in the latter part of April. And at our next meeting, we'll be having quite a bit of more business there to get ready for, I think it's the 48 motions that will be brought to that AGM that'll go on for 3 days online. So that was Committee of the Whole. Did I miss anything, board or staff?
Rick,
Okay.
the only thing is Kai and Nolan don't have to sit through all of the entire meeting.
No, you're welcome to if you're curious about how all this works, but if you actually have a better way to spend your Wednesday night, then we would understand that.
I just wanted to say thanks to everybody and thanks for the time. And again, thanks Kai for presenting, the great work that you're doing. So I think I'm going to bow out for this evening. So, but thank you ever so much.
All right. Thanks for your help, Nolan.
Thank you so much as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So we have one set of minutes from that Committee of the Whole meeting from the February meeting to be accepted.
Recommend. Go for it, David.
That the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on February 10th, 2021 be accepted.
Thanks.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none. Anybody opposed? All right, that's carried. Today we had no policy committee meeting and no finance committee meeting. And that gives me the opportunity to turn the page on my agenda. Indigenous Education Council. I'm not sure if they've met since our last meeting.
Rick, if I could just jump in.
Of course.
I could be wrong, but I think we need to adopt some minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held February 10th.
Yeah, you're right. I went right over it, as is my wont.
All right, I can read it if you'd like. That
Please
the
do.
minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on February the 10th, 2021 be accepted.
Yes, thank you very much. Seconder for that. Thanks, Ian. Any discussion? Anybody opposed? Those minutes are carried. Thanks for catching me there, Cynthia. So that does take us down to Indigenous Education Council. Anything to report?
Hi, Rick, it's Rebecca.
Hi.
Hi, the SD48 Indigenous Education Council hasn't met since our last meeting, but we are meeting on Friday.
Right.
So next meeting we will have a report. But as you know, for the BC Association, School Trustees Association, I'm on the Indigenous Education Council.
Yes.
And we have met, so I can just do a little brief
That would
report
be
out
interesting.
from that.
Please do.
Okay. So we met a couple weeks ago and we got approval from the board, which you're a board member, I'm sure you're aware. But we have been approved to hire a consultant to help us develop a resource guide relating to the BCT agreement. That will assist all of the school districts in the province in our interpretation of some of the key points in the tripartite agreement. And then we're working that in line with BCSTA's strategic plan as well. We also are working on the call out questions that will be as the AGM this year is virtual, so the questions will be posed there. So we have a follow-up meeting next week to further discuss, but that's where we're at with that.
Great.
And that's it.
So those call out questions that you're referring to, they're questions given to the members' boards to inspire discussion, and is that the purpose? Can you clarify that?
Absolutely. So we generally have them at each of the whenever the school boards get together.
I remember seeing them posted.
Yeah, they were generally posted, and so they could be questions that will help guide the Indigenous Education Council on what some of the districts are wanting to learn more about, or it can be specific questions asking for what your knowledge is on what individual trustee knowledge is on certain topics, and then that helps us guide our work and recommendations that we bring forward to the board to consider.
Sure. Great.
So some of the questions coming out this year will be related to the tripartite agreement and individual understanding of it, plus the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous People. Those are a lot of the higher level items that will be posed. So I'm not sure how they're getting those out to members, and we've been discussing different options on the best way to reach the most people.
Right.
So hope that answers your questions.
Yep, that's great. Any other questions on that report from the BCSTA Indigenous Education Council? Okay, we'll move along. Thank you. Was there anything out of PR this time, Cynthia?
No, we don't have anything to bring forward right now.
Thank you. So moving down through, we have no business arising under the heading of general, but when we move to 8B, information items, there's going to be quite a bit, and it starts with the COVID update. Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. We don't have a lot new to report under the topic of COVID. As everyone knows, in February, we were issued some updated safety plan guidelines by BC CDC and the Ministry of Education. Those guidelines have been implemented in our schools, and all of the safety plans have been updated. I want to thank our occupational health and safety committees as well for meeting and working through that information. So the changes that we saw were that students now need to physically distance themselves from outside of their learning group by 2 meters rather than the past recommendation of 1 to 2 meters. And they are to be reminded that they, within their learning groups, they should reduce the physical contact and avoid that close face-to-face interaction. Specific guidelines for physical education and our extracurricular athletics were brought in. Basically, if there's going to be vigorous exercise, students should mask up or go outside or space out. And as well for music, students are asked to wear masks if they are singing, and also to spread out a little bit more if possible. The new guidelines also saw strengthened mask guidelines for middle and secondary students and all K-12 staff in schools. Being asked now to wear non-medical masks in all indoor areas, including when they are inside their learning group. And the exceptions to those are when they're sitting or standing at a workstation or their seat, or perhaps there's a barrier in place, or when they're eating or drinking. And I just want to note that for elementary school students, wearing masks remains a personal choice. The public health officer has created a rapid response team in each health authority, and those have now been established to support any outbreaks that may occur. And a new health checker app is available to the public to support daily screening. So like I mentioned, all of these updates have been posted on the school and district websites. All of those plans have been updated, and the BC CDC has also launched a new website for parents and students. It has very useful information, and that can be found on our school district website if anyone's interested. So what has happened since we've returned to school after the winter break? In January, we had 15 potential exposures in our schools. In February, there were 6, and in March, there were 3. This impacted approximately 112 students and 24 staff needing to self-isolate or more regularly check for symptoms. Now, planning for year-end events is a question we're getting asked a lot right now. What does this look like for our graduation ceremonies? And even you as a board talked earlier today about retirement celebrations, etc. So at this time, schools have been told to plan with the same guidelines in place that were in place last June. So we're anticipating that our ceremonies and our celebrations will look very similar, if not identical. There is some talk on both sides of the current guidelines, some that says they may be enhanced further, and the activities may need to be reduced even more. And other talk is that they may be relaxed for the purpose of graduation. So we currently have the marching orders to stick with the current gathering safety guidelines and not to expect much else. So that's what our schools will be doing, and we thank our student grad committees and our parent grad committees for their work on ensuring those safety measures are enacted for those events. And as far as planning for school startup in September, fairly similar information as to what I shared before. School districts have 5 stages under the K-12 plan from the BC government. Stage 1 currently represents a return to normal type atmosphere. Now, the provincial COVID committee is working on each of the stages and taking a look at the safety measures that are recommended within each. And as we understand it right now, stage 1 will not remain the way it is now as business as usual, but instead we'll have some minor inclusions of some safety measures. So in other words, if we get permission to open in stage 1 in September, we will be including a subset of safety measures regardless of what happens over the next few months. So we're asked to be ready for stage 1 and asked to be ready to have some of these safety measures in place, but we've also been told to be ready to quickly pivot into any of the other stages in the different categories. So we will remain hopeful that we can return under stage 1 in September. That's all for that, Rick.
Okay, Let's see if there's any questions from trustees on the COVID safety report.
If I could ask one question.
Please.
If there is a return to stage 1, do you know if that will look like in the secondary schools, the quadmester system or the trimester system, or will that be sort of a bit of the information that might be added to what stage 1 looks like?
Yeah, that we don't know, Cynthia. And one of the big questions out there is, will we be organizing with learning groups? Because that's one of the very significant strategies that impacts a school, their schedule, their timetable. And so, no, we do not have any guidance yet on whether learning groups or reduced contact among different groups is going to be part of the safety measures.
Thanks for that, Lisa. That's
it's a good question, and we will come out and let people know as soon as we know anything about that.
That's great. Thank you.
Anything else for Lisa on the COVID-19 report? Okay, then we're going to move down to item B, which could be the biggest item on the agenda this evening. It is the draft occupational policy 501.3 school configuration, student placement. Lisa is going to, well, as you may be able to guess, we've been hearing from our public with lots of questions on this, and good questions, and we're anxious to answer them. And in fact, Lisa has been working hard to prepare for this meeting so that she can deal with as many of the questions and the issues that have been brought up as she possibly can. Most of those questions are going to be kind of operational in nature, and therefore exactly the superintendent's business. But I also wanted to put a bit of a governance lens on the issue. So I'm going to read a little bit of a statement that takes a look at this issue from a governance or school board point of view rather than an operational one. So to be clear, the policy and the accompanying operational practices are not created in isolation by staff. As a board, our governance role is best exemplified in the strategic plan, which represents the expressed values and goals of the community for our schools. The board's further interest is in the district's ability to align practices to that plan. Our staff are tasked by us with that challenge. In recent years, thanks to the diligence of our staff, we've received new data, compelling new data, illustrating convincingly that while as a district we've made significant gains in terms of graduation rates, gains, by the way, that we don't hesitate to boast about when we have the opportunity, we've also inadvertently perpetuated a system that overrepresents certain groups of disadvantaged students in courses that might lead to graduation, but also lead to limited post-secondary career and learning options. And to the extent that one key group overrepresented in these courses is, in fact, our First Nations students, then this can be seen and is seen as systemic racism. This is unacceptable. I would add that this data has been extensively shared with our staff and with our public in the past. So this should not be breaking news that I am revealing at this moment. Our recent education plan refresh with input from community partners, parents, staff, and the board was designed to solidify and accelerate the process of changing these conditions which disadvantage select groups of our students. From a governance level, then, that is exactly what is needed in order that we remain true to the values and the beliefs expressed by our partners through our strategic plans. The details of how to achieve that are not the purview of the board itself. They are operational in nature, And we expect the staff to do this very challenging work, and we expect them to do it with some urgency. It is urgent work because there are students currently in our classrooms counting on us to change these conditions and enhance their post-secondary options. We have every confidence that our skilled and dedicated staff will succeed at these very difficult challenges. So I wanted to say this just to repeat myself, because people often wonder, they hear a lot from our staff because they're the experts on the operational aspects of all of these activities. And they often wonder, where's the board in all of this? And I wanted to provide that context before Lisa goes ahead with her report and discussion. And so the floor is now over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Rick. That's really helpful. We appreciate those remarks from the board. So what I will do is start by just thanking everyone for the discussions being held, the questions being asked, and the type of dissonance that we are seeing between groups who are polar on these topics. And what I want to say to both groups in different camps on this topic of inclusion and diversity and how to achieve it, that the dialogue is what's important, because it's the right thing to be talking about, and we're the right district to be having the conversation. We have achieved incredible results on behalf of all students, and also in particular our students who identify as having Indigenous ancestry. But that work that we have done does not leave our students graduating with the same life chances and the same human condition as compared to all other students. And so despite our amazing graduation rates, we are holding ourselves very accountable to what lies right beneath that. So the other piece of this is that this policy falls pretty directly out of our education plan, and very specifically out of the board's policy 501. And that I think is being confused a little bit too. So I'm going to endeavor to create a little bit of synergy around understanding what this policy is and isn't. And where we've been asked whether we're going to amend some of the language in the policy, we're going to talk about who we're going to work with on that. But to some degree, the answer is no, because the language falls precisely out of our education plan. And you've heard the board's desire for us to take on this work. And we are, for the board's sake, the right people to take on this work. We assure you of that. So operational policy 501.3 is actually an operational policy. It is not a board policy, and it does not go through the same policy impact process. It is designed by staff and for staff to follow other board direction already given. That direction in this case is the education plan, and then specifically board policy 501, student registration, enrollment, and placement. That policy provides the board direction for student registrations, student transfer requests, the assignment of students into schools, and the grade placement of students in our district. So operational policy 501.3 is about school configuration and student placement. And it provides the district's guiding principles for the creation of school configurations of classes and courses, the placement of students into those classes and courses, the teacher's schedules, and school requests for additional classroom support when a teacher says that they would benefit from that. So the board's policy says, here's who the students are that belong to that school and how we will know that. And our policy says, once we receive a child in a school, how do we organize for them and place them? The policy operationalizes our education plan as well and reiterates our commitment to inclusion and equity in order to provide every student with optimal and personalized learning environments so that each of them graduate barrier-free and with equal opportunity. So the idea is an equal outcome, and through which we apply equitable means of getting there. This draft policy is intended to be developed over time and implemented when that process finishes. However, the work embedded in this policy is already well underway in our schools, and many of their exceptional practices have supported the formation of this draft. Highlights of the policy include guidelines for collaborative decision-making for our staff when they are developing a schedule and placing students. Strength-based professional dialogue with a focus on students' functional needs rather than other indications such as gender identity and special education designations. And it calls for privacy and confidentiality and professionalism with respect to speaking of students and making thoughtful placements for those students. It ensures our enduring understandings, specifically inclusion as a basic human right and diversity as a strength remain top of mind, and creating diverse groupings of students rather than by grade or by ability in each of the settings. The barrier-free schedule for student learning in the grad program to optimize post-secondary access for all students, rather than, as Rick mentioned, having the current overrepresentation of specific group of students in any graduation requirement courses. And importantly, also outlines the provision of supports for students and teachers for the successful implementation of this plan. You have stated, Rick, that we've heard a lot of questions, and rather than go on talking about this topic, I thought it might be best to embed some of the most frequently asked questions in and frame what I'm saying around answers to those questions. So one of the questions we've been asked quite a bit about is about whether or not we are removing workplace math courses. So workplace math is a ministry approved math option among the math course offerings for the BC graduation program. Students are required to complete at least one of the Math 10 and 11 courses for their Dogwood graduation completion. And despite workplace math being a ministry approved course and an excellent course across the province and including in our school district, student placement into these workplace courses has resulted in the unintended outcome of racial overrepresentation, as well as a discriminatory bias socioeconomically. The intention of our staff is to eradicate that which would strain students through any predetermined assumptions, and most especially those assumptions related to race, culture, or other discriminatory facets. So with this in mind, our schools will continue to work individually with any student requesting workplace math, yet will also ensure that students who perceive themselves to have significant difficulties in math to understand how we can support them through successful completion of foundations or pre-calculus math courses, should they choose to keep the doors associated with those options open. We also have a plan to enhance student learning in math from kindergarten through to grade 12. Our school district data indicate that our students would benefit from a system-wide focus in this area, as we see achievement concerns and gaps widen over time rather than become reduced over a student's age. So each school will be adding a math strategy into their school learning plans and are working on that now. Many schools are contemplating how to add more time for math into their daily structures. And we will be providing additional support to teachers with any of their professional learning needs through the new approaches emerging in this regard. Another question is whether the district values students pursuing careers in various trades, or whether this is an indication that we prefer all students to attend university. The school district values all students' hopes and post-secondary plans for their future. We value students having a plan by exploring their own strengths, their interests, and the related opportunities that exist. We also value students having alternate and backup plans so they can provide themselves with flexibility in their post-secondary future. This includes valuing that many students are not yet certain of which option they wish to pursue, and still others who feel certain now often change their mind later. We are in no way valuing a particular outcome for any student, but rather planning to ensure that students who graduate from School District 48 do so with as many options as possible. And unfortunately, at this time, workplace math does not provide as many post-secondary options for students, and often more likely results in creating additional barriers, such as requiring upgrading in the future or additional courses to be taken in the post-secondary institutions, yet more barriers for groups of students who already face more than usual barriers in their life. These barriers discriminate against vulnerability, such as socioeconomic status and academic self-concept. And in SD 48, all students who wish to be supported through other math courses will be supported to do so and to do so successfully. How to address math anxiety and worry is another question. We are also committed to addressing math stigma and anxiety from kindergarten right through to grade 12. Over time, we can work on this with our students so that all students see themselves as mathematically capable learners. Our system owns the majority of shares in the business of building mathematically confident learners, and therefore we must also take on the majority of the responsibility for changing that situation. Right away, we will ensure that all students get the successful experiences and personal practice to build on their confidence, and that everyone receives the personalized instructional approach specified in our education plan to which they have the right. One excellent example of this work is a teacher at Brackendale Elementary already working with her students on their math identity. This is intended to support each of them with seeing their strengths in math and numerical reasoning, and also in the long term, advancing their success in math. This is the type of work that's already started in our district and is exemplary. Some students may be unable to handle the complexity of math beyond the content of workplace math, is another concern that's been brought to our attention. So the policy is applied to math at the secondary level, is intended to lead schools and families through thoughtful dialogue, not specifically tell them exactly what to do. That thoughtful dialogue might be, how can we design for all learners to feel capable of taking on challenging math concepts? How can we personalize our instruction and the student learning tasks to include all learners in any course they wish to take? What support and professional learning does our staff need to personalize their instruction and support learners with complex needs? We believe that our schools have the capacity to design foundations and pre-calculus math courses within reach of all students where they can be successful. So for example, schools may elect to schedule some courses with more daily or weekly instructional time, or they may choose to have some courses last longer over this school year than some other courses in order to, again, provide additional instruction, more time on task, and more practice for their students. Schools may also elect to have an additional teacher assigned to some courses so that no one teacher has to work in isolation. A teaching team can then co-plan together for more hands-on interactive learning activities and applied tasks and projects. In some cases, assistive technology and manipulatives may support a learner. And teachers can also use this policy and the related administrative procedures to also ask for a collaborative support teacher to assist them in the classroom with any diverse needs that may challenge their practices. Additionally, the secondary learning services teams already provide excellent student support directly in class for students who benefit from this. Teachers may also request additional professional learning opportunities to assist them with designing for inclusion, and we continue to work with our teachers, our schools, our union on all kinds of professional learning opportunities, and we will continue to do that. Now, these next questions, there's 4 of them, and I'm going to read them all together and then answer all together. They're very thoughtful questions, and I don't want to scan over them. So I'm just gonna have a sip of water. Okay, the 4 questions are, what steps and processes are in place to ensure policy 501.3 will be applied through an anti-ableist lens? How will this policy support the design of programming that meets the needs of the most marginalized students in the district? How will this policy work towards ending the exclusion of complex learners? And how does this policy fit into the board's larger strategic plan for inclusion? So these are critically important questions. Policy 501.3 does fall directly out of the Board of Education's enduring understandings within the strategic plan, as I've mentioned. Those enduring understandings are inclusion is a basic human right of all people and every child in our system. that diversity is a strength from which all people benefit, and that personalization, not exclusion, is the way forward. The policy, in fact, is intended to acknowledge that in public education broadly, there exists many ableist perspectives, and we must take on that the responsibility to change that. For example, the belief that French immersion is only intended for advanced learners. Our data indicate that there is a preponderance of families from higher socioeconomic backgrounds enrolled in French immersion. Our board has asked us to actively seek ways to diminish the unintended divisive nature of French immersion in schools, and French immersion learning supports have been enhanced to provide more inclusive learning environments in our French immersion programs. Another example, Calculus 12 being only for a discrete few secondary students. Our data, for example, indicate that very few to absolutely no students of Indigenous ancestry being typically enrolled in Calculus 12 in School District 48. Why is that? What does this indicate about our system? What does this say about our school district? 100%, this does not in any way represent the actual capabilities of our Indigenous learners. So again, what does this represent? At the very least, it's an indication of the racism of low expectations that has perpetuated in our school system for far too long. Another one of these ideas is that workplace math is for students of C- or lesser in math before they get to grade 10, rather than these students being encouraged to take on foundations or pre-calculus math with additional support in place to assist them. These discriminatory assumptions are not in our school district alone. They are provincially widely understood. They are nationally understood. They are globally recognized. In fact, Ontario right now is dismantling streamed math courses in grade 9 and banning any level of streaming in their schools, and having quite a notable fight about it in their province. Regardless, these discriminatory assumptions must end. And as to this parent's important perspective, we have a collective responsibility to change our system from an ableist system to one which sees all learners as capable. And as we've mentioned many, many times, the students who this parent refers to as marginalized are the very students who teach us the most as educators about the supports which benefit students and allow us to then universally apply that to all other learners. Our data is very clear that when we support our most vulnerable learners, all learners actually benefit. But great work has been started under this policy and continues to take hold in our district. All of our staff are leading this work forward already. Our elementary teachers and learning services teams are doing what amounts to a full court press on co-planning for personalized learning in the classrooms so that every single student benefits from just right goals and just right learning plans. And that the concept of interventions takes on a new lens of personalization for all. Our digital portfolio and student My Action Plan are strategies to ensure that every student are engaged in co-designing their learning in their own personalized way. Our secondary learning services teams are providing in-class push and support across the core curricular areas for students who benefit from that assistance, but don't want to miss important learning in their classroom by being pulled out. Our middle schools have been working hard to rethink how we organize and schedule for student learning in a way that is more personalized, inclusive, and considers the adolescent brain development research. Our staff have moved away from compartmentalized and disconnected block-style learning environments to a more inclusive and connected classroom environment, where students now work with fewer teachers in a way that enables more personalization, support, inclusion, and cross-curricular approach to learning. Middle school staff are also working to remove the support block structure, not eliminating support, but eliminating the stigma of pulling a student out in front of their peers. And they are now working on improving the support by working directly with the students in the classroom and placing them with an attuned and caring teacher for the most of the day, and then with another team partner who's also attuned and caring, and the team of teachers working together with those students. It's in class where the students want to be. Teachers are able to know their students and understand their learning goals much more deeply. How we design does make a difference, and that is the intention of this policy. Our graduation program staff have taken on a more inclusive and pro-social approach to the new Career and Life Education program, which places students with a teacher advocate over their 3 years in the graduation program, has teachers explicitly teaching social emotional learning and strategies which strengthen youth mental health, providing students with personalized support through their post-secondary planning, and breaking down the grade level status in a secondary school to create one of the strongest known youth protective factors of all, that being a sense of connection and belonging to a group of peers and a caring adult advocate. This work is a big shift and is also worthy of sharing with respect to this policy and the evidence-based protective factors which fall out of it, and that our secondary graduation program teachers are to be commended for. I would also like to take this chance to elaborate on the concept of marginalization. I can get a little bit emotional on this one, so I'm going to stay strong. But to be certain, our students are doing their very best every day. I prefer to point out to everyone that we do not describe our learners as marginalized students, using marginalized as an adjective to describe them. Rather, I wish to make clear and point out to everyone that our children are amazing, and many of them amazing while having been marginalized. This being acts of discrimination and racism made against them by many factors, societal, systemic, familial, and otherwise, and in large part by globally anti-ableist and unintentionally discriminatory and systemically racist public education systems in our world. We just want to appreciate that moving forward, we're going to work with our District Parent Advisory Council and through a new DPAC Inclusion Committee of parents, where we will work with them jointly to explore how we ensure the values of inclusion and diversity and personalization are actually realized in our learning environments. And we really value and look forward to working with those parents who have committed to this time. And we will also continue to work closely with the local First Nation knowledge keepers toward a more inclusive way of being. One of the quotes that comes from our draft local education agreement with the Leewat Nation is the following, and this is the quote. The gap in educational outcomes between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students is the result of a persisting legacy of colonialism, and concerted efforts and proactive measures are required to eliminate this gap and contribute to reconciliation in education. As a system, we must act with urgency in order to prepare all students so that they can access and pursue any opportunities they choose for higher learning, employment, and life chances. This includes that we ensure the intentional or unintentional streaming or marginalization of students is not tolerated, and that each and every student is placed in an educational program that leads to graduation with a Dogwood diploma and a full range of opportunities such as training, post-secondary education, and employment. So that quote was placed in there by Leewat Nation, and they've asked us to observe that and take action against it. And the last quote that I'm going to leave everyone with, because there's some talk about timing and the need for time. And so this person is, woman is Jacka Blaze-Amir. She's the Director of Grants and Racial Equity Strategy in a Calgary Foundation. And one of her quotes sits on my wall, and I find it very compelling. Her quote is, "The impact of ignoring systemic inequities is more than wasted potential and countless injustices. For many, it's literally a matter of life or death. It's painful to be asked for patience." So Rick, I think I'm going to leave it at that. And if there are other questions that I haven't answered, other than the board's questions, which I think I can take right now, I can answer any other questions later.
There we go. For the public who have questions arising out of this, there's the opportunity, the last item on the agenda, questions for clarification from the public. We'll be going there in a short time. So this next few minutes is for the board to ask any questions that they might have of Lisa after that very thorough report. So I'm just opening it up.
Hi, Rick. May I?
Yes.
Thank you for that, Lisa. It's really helpful to hear the vision behind the work that's being done, and it is super difficult work. I just wanted to reiterate what I heard today a few times now and in earlier meetings, is that workplace math is still an option in the district. I'm really excited to hear that additional supports will be put into place to ensure that students can succeed in any math course that they choose to take on, specifically additional teacher supports. And I just wanted to repeat that for parents as well, attending DPAC meetings and sitting on committees is one way that parents can engage with the district and provide support, provide feedback rather, on what is working and what isn't working. And so this is a time of change. We have leadership with a vision, and I really encourage parents to engage and get involved and help the leaders that we have in place to make sure that we're moving in a direction that supports students to the full extent that we can.
Anything else from trustees for Lisa? Okay, thank you, Lisa. So following this item, the next item on the agenda is the Squamish Catchment Area Update, and that is Mo's baby. So Mohammed, if you want to update the board on progress on that initiative.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. So this is just a reminder for the board and also for the public that we have gone through a number of steps for the catchment area review, including not only planning it out on what the consultation will look like last year, and then also prior to that, kind of justifying why it needs to be done due to some of our capacity pressures we have in our schools, more or less within Squamish Elementary, and needing to find a solution to that. We also followed that and the planning we did, and a number of engagement sessions with not only our PACs in Mamquam, Brackendale, and Squamish Elementary, but we also met with staff in the schools. And we also, in addition to that, had a survey for families that were being impacted by the potential catchment area changes, which would be taking place in September 2023, if approved by the board. And please go to our website for more information if you are curious to know what those catchment area changes are. And we've had that survey open for about a couple of months now. And in addition to that, we also had the advertisement of that survey on the local newspaper too. So it was on Squamish Chief. So with that said, to conclude our consultation process, we do have a town hall that's going to be available through Zoom for anyone that may be impacted and they live in the communities of North Yards, Loggers Lane and Finch Drive, Tantalus and Skyridge. And basically that town hall on Zoom will be next Wednesday, so March 17th from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. So if you are in fact an elementary parent or a future elementary parent and you will be impacted by the September 2023 date, and you meaning that you don't have kids that are currently in the current elementary schools, because those kids will be grandfathered in, then please feel free to attend this town hall. And it's going to be very collaborative and interactive. So we look forward to your questions and answering some of them at that time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Any questions for Mo? Okay, as you move down the agenda, you will see that you have a couple of attachments on field trips, media reports, no correspondence, and then the next item is also Mo Azim's, because it is a discussion item, group meeting summary feedback.
Okay, thank you, Rick. So before I get started in the actual partner group meeting summary feedback, I wanted to just quickly share my screen. And I wanted to just walk everyone through what are we doing when it comes to the consultation and how does it integrate within the budget. So really quickly, I have infographics that we developed and we have on our website when it comes to financial information section on our website that kind of depicts the budget development process from the perspective of consultation. So in reality, to date, we have completed 1/3 of our budget development process. So that means that we have completed the phase from December to February. And within there, the consultation process looked like not only was it releasing information, but we also had a survey which was released in December and concluded at the end of January, available to all of our partner groups, our stakeholders, and our right holders, followed by going to the partner group meeting, which is all of our stakeholders, meaning like certain members of our stakeholders, right holders, and partner groups, and meeting with them in the middle of February, which we already did, for the emphasis of prioritizing the feedback that was coming in from that open survey. Okay, so with that said, that kind of concluded the collaboration phase of consultation and our budget development process. What are we going to be doing after this? Following presenting some of the highlights or examples of the partner group meeting budget development prioritization that were released. We are going to be sharing this document with all of our school principals and all of our site managers that are responsible for budgeting to now give them further ideas about kind of what the overall school system is saying when it comes to functional needs and some of the cool things we're doing and things like that. Just keep in mind that this is just one of many different type of consultation that we get. So not only do we kind of have to keep our eyes open of what's going to happen in September. I'll give you an example, even with a pandemic and stuff like that, and our planning that's associated with that, even though right now we're planning for a return to normal or what the new normal will look like. But we also have to, part of the consultation, ensure that there is feedback coming from various other sources, and we are looking into other things like our collective agreements and the School Act and ministry requirements and the framework for enhancing student learning, and it goes on and on. So this is just one of many pieces. It's very important, but it's one of many pieces that we have to take into account as site leaders when it comes to our overall budget. And overall, I think a key message would be, well, where do all of these things fit when it comes to alignment? So in reality, a key thing that we're trying to align to is our strategic plan, which is delineated by the board-approved educational plan. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of basically what the consultation looks like in form of the budget development process. The next thing I really quickly wanted to go over is the actual partner group meeting summary feedback. So in reality, I did share this document with the board since the agenda has been released. And the public does have access to this document. It's on the board, it's as a hyperlink on the board agenda. But just going over some of the highlights from this document, it's broken down into basically the exact same categories which we had our survey broken down into, and then also same categories which the partner groups summarize that survey in their top 3 priorities, okay? So the categories included finance, facilities and transportation, student support and programs, learning resources, and parent and community partnerships. The first column it kind of summarizes the initiatives that we are doing well when it comes to this district for coming back from our stakeholders and partner groups, the top 3 priorities, okay? The second column, even though we're trying to, when it comes to sitting down with the partner groups in that meeting format and summarize and making functional needs, meaning bigger picture needs from the feedback. In reality, you would see that there's still a number of kind of solutions instead of problems in this, in the functional needs and concerns when it comes to the top 3 categories from the partner groups in that meeting. So what we have to do right after that is, as admin council and senior leadership team, we have to look at that section, which is the functional needs and concerns, and then we have to summarize it into, okay, well, what is the bigger picture? And then right after we've identified the bigger picture, we wanted to show what we're doing when it comes to the district responses. So I'm just going to give a few examples. When it comes to the bigger picture, maintaining school level of cleaning or maintenance of school facilities and safety, key part of what we do on an annual basis is our annual facilities grant and our updated capital plan spending, our capital spending plan or approval plan that we submit to the ministry on a year-to-year basis. So we do both of these things. So the annual facility grants goes more into the details. Okay, well, do we need new washrooms or gender neutral washrooms, or do we need to refresh some things within the school? And the capital plan, it's okay, well, do we need a new school? Do we need a new modernization? Do we need a significant external or internal refresh for that school? Is there any environmental efficiencies that we could be making and all that stuff? So this is a key part of what we do on a year-to-year basis. Another example of a bigger picture problem is it's the increased language and culture under student support programs. Okay, so what are we doing to support that in this year and the years before this, and including probably going on to next year? We're doing things like the equity scan, which is also not only looking at things from an Indigenous standpoint and vulnerabilities there, but also how are we including in other minorities and how are we including in other vulnerable populations there. Also, we're looking at things like when it comes to authentic and personalized learning, aligning school learning plans to our educational plan, because a strong emphasis on our educational plan was a personalized learning part of it. Just moving on to another example, which is learning resources, increasing access to devices and online tools. Well, another key thing that we do, and we're going to continue to do, which we're hearing from a community on a year-to-year basis, is maintaining our district technology refresh strategy, which not only resulted in 1-to-1 student to laptop ratios for grades 4 to 12 and 1-to-3 student to laptop ratio, 1-to-4 from grades kindergarten to 3. It also deals with making sure that our teachers are working or have newer laptops or newer technology in their hands. So, and also it touches on things like, okay, do school servers need to be replaced? Are school servers still the thing to go, or do we need to go cloud-based, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all dealt with in that technology refresh strategy. But that's one of the bigger picture things we've heard from our partner groups is to maintain that and increase it. And then just the final example I wanted to do was under parent and community partnerships. It was the bigger theme of communications. So over the last couple of years, what the district has done is we have basically enhanced or not only and modernized our district website, but also we've aligned all school websites to our district website And we've also started utilizing our communications officer position a little bit more when it comes to centralized messaging and communication, whether it's things like the safety plan or whether it's things like the budget development survey in the form of like, or infographics when it comes to many things like the safety plan or the budget development, or I think 5 or 6 other infographics that we have recently done. But the key reason why we did that was to support communications and better communications with our partner groups. So if you want to have some more specific details on some of the functional needs and concerns, how we interpreted it as a bigger picture and what we're doing as a district, please review this document in detail. And this is both for the trustees and also the public too. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. I'm wondering, are there any questions for Mo on that partner group meeting summary feedback report? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking down through the agenda. Past policy motions, there are none. Action motions, there are none. Nothing brought out of camera, nothing in terms of bylaws, and that takes us to the last item on the agenda, which is questions of clarification from the public. So I'll just introduce this one by saying that technically the questions are questions for the board. When they are operational in nature, and many of them are, then we usually pass it over to our superintendent or some other senior staff member to take that question. On this occasion, we've had a fairly extensive report that was intended to address, or at least partly address, many of the issues that we already knew about regarding policy 501. And so we think we've answered some of those questions, and we probably haven't answered them all. So when we get a question now, Lisa is probably going to take a look at it and make a judgment call about whether she thinks she's already answered it or not. If not, she'll attempt to answer it. If she thinks she has, then we won't repeat that again, because we'd be here for a long time if we did that, given the volume of questions that have come through. Now, I just have to say that if we think we answered the question and the questioner thinks we didn't, this doesn't have to be the end of it. It will be the end of it this evening, but our staff is always available to get in touch with and do follow-ups and learn more. We want our public to be very clearly informed about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So with that having been said, let's begin to go through the questions. How is this going to work, Mo? Are you going to read them?
Yeah, so Rick, if the board is gracious, I just need 2 minutes to organize some of the questions that I've been getting during my presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You take your 2 minutes. In fact, take 3.5 if you need it.
Okay.
And we'll be in an informal recess for about 3 minutes or so.
I could answer the question from the students.
That's what we're talking about. I thought that was.
I'm not doing the anti-Eagles one. I already got back to her. So if you can you strike out these ones?
Yeah, just give me a second, guys. Almost done. Tim's gonna last 3 more.
No, I can't. I can't answer. You're gonna have to screen this one. So I'm gonna. No, it was a 3-minute recess.
Yeah, but I think we're still live.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start. Mo's trying to get it organized in this document for me. I'll do my best. Chris, is everything underneath that heading of questions after the board meeting? I'll put my cursor, you tell me if I'm at the beginning. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm gonna have to move quickly through these and I'll do my best to answer them. Oops, just jumped away on me. One question was about, sorry, you know what? I'm sorry, the document's jumping around on me, so I can't.
Yep, I'm done. That's it.
I
That's all the
can't.
questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, there we go. So there was a question about some of our parents wanting us to move faster. It was a comment Mr. Kent made, Trustee Kent. And Ian, I'll let you answer it if you want, but what I can tell you is that we are receiving many emails from families who would like to see us, do not think that we are as inclusive as we could already be. And what we reassure those families of is that one of the main reasons why inclusion as a right and diversity as a strength is in our education plan is that we are fully acknowledging that our system needs to change in these ways. And that is not limited to overrepresentation of children of indigeneity in certain courses, nor children from lower socioeconomic groups being overrepresented. That is one of the conversations that has emerged from questions related to the Math 10 workplace math concept. But across our K-12 sector, we have many parents asking us to do a better job with writing student IEPs, assessing situations, meeting their child's needs, and creating an inclusive setting and environment for their child. So I assure you, if Mr. Kent wants to jump in, he can. It was discussed at the DPAC meeting, but it's also an ongoing dialogue, and the DPAC Inclusion Committee, for example, is all about how they can support us with inclusion in the school district. Okay, there's another set of questions I think are from how students are going to, sorry, just give me 1 second.
So Lisa, anything in green would be a question, and anything that's not in green would just be the preamble.
I'm not even sure what the one question means. How does the board justify the statistical underrepresentation in French immersion programs? I think what, not to speak on behalf of the board, but as the CEO of the school district operationalizing this policy, I would say that it's unacceptable that there's an underrepresentation of children from lower socioeconomic settings and other cultures and so on represented in French immersion. And the board has given us a wide berth to go after changing that, to break down the divisive nature of French immersion, and to include students in French immersion who may have complex learning needs, may be English is not their first language. So it is concerning that French immersion seems to have had the unintended outcome of creating a different group of people choosing it. I want to be really clear. It is a program of choice. All students are welcome to apply, to come into French immersion, and our waitlist providing all students get into French immersion. And we do have many students with complex needs in French immersion who are thriving. Yeah, there's some question about the concept of diversity in nature being applied to diversity in a classroom. And I find it both interesting and very concerning. There's some questions about invasive species in the natural world being added to a habitat and creating concern. And I will just not honor a question that might be making a metaphor that one of our children might be an invasive species if they enter a different classroom. So I'm going to choose not to honor that piece. On the ground, how are staff going to do the work? Our staff are doing brilliant work around this on the ground already. This policy outlines the guiding principles, not the prescriptive decisions they will make, and it's not intended to be prescriptive. As with all policy, it's intended to be higher than specific direction. It's intended to be value-based and provide guiding principles, and our staff at each school will interpret the policy and put it into place in a way that works for their students and their school. And there will also be administrative procedures that the staff will have, which will be much more specific and descriptive in nature. There's some questions here about very able learners and whether or not they're being left out of the conversation, students who are progressing quickly with their learning and doing a great job. And the suggestion here is something related to baselining everything and treating all students as if they're approaching their learning from the same space. And I would just be really clear that the concept of personalization speaks exactly to this. Students should be treated at a very personalized level for their learning. So children with complex needs who maybe are challenged with some of the learning should be able to slow down and get more practice. And students who are advancing very quickly through the curriculum and able to quite easily meet the outcomes of the curriculum should be given projects and tasks which stretch them and promote them with their own growth and development. And that's what the whole concept of personalization is about. And again, I just want to object to the concept that a child with a learning challenge being included in a setting would ever bring down the learning of another student. In fact, we have data which suggests the opposite of that is true. There's a question about multi-age grouping in 10 to 12, essentially asking what that looks like. Well, in our graduation program, grade 10, 11, and 12, it essentially, every course is a multi-age grouping in that whichever students need that course, take that course. So let's use Science 10. Any student in the school who requires Science 10 and does not yet have it can take that Science 10 course. So you might find grade 11 students or grade 12 students in a Science 10 course. Or conversely, you may find a grade 11 student taking Calculus 12. So once students get into grade 10, there actually aren't grades attached to who's in a course. However, the preponderance of students, at least in grade 10 and 11, are in grade 10 and 11. And then once we get into some other maybe extended grade 11 sciences and other courses in grade 12, we start to see a broader group of students. But courses are for whoever needs the course. And the career and life education approach to multi-age grouping, however, has been intentionally designed to have grade 10, 11, and 12 with similar size groupings in the course so that there is no, it's a concept called combating status. There is no status in the school. We are all students in the school. We learn together. We value from learning together, and we create that type of pro-social environment in our school by working together. So it's a more intentional design using evidence coming out of the mental health field and really out of the UBC HELP program and MDI data researchers. So we use a lot of mental health evidence-based approaches, and that multi-age grouping we were referring to was about that. You would not necessarily see that in a typical course. You would see whoever needs to take that course. How does yeah, thanks again. Just give me 1 second, folks. Just trying to get down there. How can I properly plan and select what courses I want for next year when my class configuration isn't clearly described to me? Class configuration is never described to a student. You will come into a class with a diverse range of learners, and you should be selecting your courses based on your own post-secondary planning, your own interests, and you may see opportunities ahead of you and feel that a certain course would advantage you in those opportunities. So it's about looking at your own strengths, considering your own interests, looking at potential opportunities and your own post-secondary plan, and not about considering who might be in your course and how that impacts you. No, students will not be disrupted in their learning if they're already on the graduation path. Students will be taking their courses as usual, and if they're doing well, we congratulate them and good on you for the hard work. I think I already answered these questions. Sorry, just keep going down.
Yeah,
I think
you're almost done.
I don't see any others down there. Okay, I think that's it. I want to be honest.
Sorry, to interject, there is one from Stephen Child, the Squamish Chief, and it's in blue. I'm also highlighting it for you. We moved it up, apologies. Oh, make it blue now. Whoop.
Oh,
folks, and
sorry, if a foundations math course proves too difficult for a student, is it better to pass at workplace math or fail at foundations? Students won't fail courses in our schools because within about 2 or 3 weeks of entering a school, the school-based team will be meeting to discuss with the teacher any worries that are existing, to apply additional supports and services both to the teacher and the student. And if a student was wanting to try a course and was concerned and started to find it overly challenging, our school-based team would work with that student, and our counselors are gifted at working with students to reschedule and find more suitable courses to keep them on their post-secondary plans. So I would just say our school counselors are brilliant at this, and we'll rely on them to work with the students on their planning. And I think that I've pretty much answered all the questions. I've done my very best. I apologize if I've neglected any. I apologize if I haven't been thorough. It's been my intent to try to do that for you. I am more than available to meet with people and sit down if we need to look at the policy more closely. And once again, I want to thank our Indigenous communities for supporting us in learning how to do this work. I want to thank our DPAC Inclusion Committee for organizing to work with us on this. And as always, I want to thank our staff for their hard work in changing life conditions for so many of our students. So thank you.
I know that the board would want me to add my thanks to those that you've expressed to our staff right across the district, the people sitting in this room and looking at us on Zoom tonight. But there are leaders right across the district, leaders who have titles and leaders who don't have titles. And we very much depend on all of that. So as this meeting concludes, gives me pleasure to add those words of gratitude, especially during this year when the difficult work that we've been describing tonight has been layered on to COVID, as though that wouldn't have been enough all by itself. So with that being said, we are at the end of the agenda, and I'm going to pause to see if there's anybody objecting to adjournment. Here's the pause. And if not, I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned because we have completed the business. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.